Well, thank you very much, Michaela. Again, I'm totally bummed that I'm not with you, but I thought, as it's after dinner, and you're probably had fantastic food, fantastic conversation, and now have sat down and need to digest a little. I thought I'm going to tell you a little bit about what TBA21 Academy is, what it wants to do, and where it's intending to go in the next 10 years. We started TBA21 Academy nearly 11 years now. This is just the end of our 10th year, 10th anniversary. And it is born out of Thyssen Bonamistza Art Contemporary, which is a contemporary art foundation, which was founded initially in 2002, literally to build a contemporary art collection. It was founded by Francesca Thyssen Bonamistza, fourth generation art collector. If you are familiar with Madrid, you might know the Thyssen Museum, which was founded by her father, who was supposedly holding the second most important, whatever that means, art collection of the last century, next to the Queen. I guess it's something about value and monetary value. Anyway, so Francesca, for the longest time, she kind of resisted being in the art world. She did restoration of historic monuments. She went to Croatia during and just after the war to restore paintings there and other monuments. But anyway, at some point she returns to the art world and she figures out that she wants to engage with it, but not like her father, who mainly dealt with dead artists, except of, I think, Lucian Freud, who painted him a number of times. But he would engage with the art world through his advisors, art advisors, auction houses, galleries, and so on. This was not the model that she wanted to replicate, but she embarked on a rather elaborate commissioning program with her chief curator at the time, Daniela Ziemann, who's still the artistic director of TBA21. And so the initial mission was really to build a unique collection through commissions and bring these commissions alive through an exhibition and public program. Approaching the 10-year anniversary of TBA21, so this was going towards 2012, but in 2010, Francesca tasked us with a new challenge, and the challenge was that she wanted to break the format of the exhibition making, which we did 3 or 4 times a year in the exhibition space in Vienna at the Augarten. And she wanted to start a program that focuses on the environment. Having realized that one of the things that both Francesca and Daniela were extremely interested in was change. Being in Central Europe, in Vienna, in a place that was rearranging itself constantly after the fall of the Iron Curtain, this was really the thing that they were interested in. And so putting it all together, the proposal was to start a project that is not producing any art in the beginning, and is trying to think with and from change. So the proposal was, can we start looking at the ocean together with artists, with scientists, with environmentalists, with legal experts, later on more and more indigenous colleagues, scientists, leadership, artists. And so we embarked, and I'm going to show you some images. Let me see. So that's that. Can you see my screen? Yes, you see my screen. Fantastic. Present. Now I need to do something. I'm not seeing it. Do you see anything?
Why not? It's still loading.
No, just white. My goodness, what happens now? Ah, there it is. Here we go. Okay. So, and we embarked on this. This is a 39-meter Explorer vessel. And after everything that was said earlier, especially about sound pollution, we are complicit with polluting the oceans through sound. This is, as I said, the Dardanella, a 39-meter Explorer vessel, which was for the longest time the home of TBA21 Academy, and this is really where we brought everyone together for 2 weeks at a time. When we would invite a group of people that are loosely connected by thought and by practice to come together and live together for 2 weeks at a time, being with, on, and in the ocean. And what we realized very quickly was that the one thing that happens when you're on the ocean, in the ocean, and with the ocean is you will be moved. And please don't follow any kind of, or don't make the connections between the image and what I'm saying, because I'm just clicking through them randomly so that you have something to see but my face. So you will be moved. And what we also realized was that this circulating, this being together, this being outside of the lab, outside of the studio, and in a relatively confined space for such a long time, sharing breakfast, lunch, and dinner, sharing bathrooms, and so on, thoughts would just circulate through this collective body that you would become over time, and thoughts would mutate through this metabolism, right? So someone would mention something at night during dinner. Someone else couldn't sleep, sits up at deck, looks at the stars. The thoughts circulate, continue to mutate, and it's reintroduced in the collective body the next day. What we also realized, and this is an image of the General Assembly of the International Seabed Authority, what we also realized was that the ocean was an extremely fractal space. The sciences were fractal, the policy making was absolutely fractal, and even the conservation aspects was fractal, because the ocean is set up in a very particular and peculiar way around, as we said earlier, areas of national jurisdiction, areas beyond national jurisdiction. It is organized through knowledge production from individual or multiple research institutes. Then information becomes proprietary knowledge and becomes owned by someone. And even if you think about conservation, even though many people want to do good for the ocean, or what we understand to be doing good for the ocean, the way that conservation is set up is that it's highly competitive. Even though many want to protect the seabed, many want to protect and restore corals, turtles, sharks, and so on, they all have to compete for a similarly or relatively small pot of money. So projects before we mounted our first exhibition, but at some point when working with artists, you also realize that you need to let them work through their hands with materials to really unfold the fullest potential. But what we also realized was that working with artists gave us a relatively unique access into these spheres of policy and large frameworks, because we were non-threatening. And this is what we've been trying to, this is a space and a position that we tried to use ever since, even though we're bringing criticality to the space. Here's the United Nations Plaza. We are still, we don't come with a political agenda, overtly political agenda. And that kind of let us create groups of people, or bring groups of people together that would otherwise never sit together. So the art, and coming from the art sector, also functions a little bit like a Trojan horse, because not a lot of people really understand what contemporary art actually is, right? When they hear art organization, they still think paintings, they still think nice images, they maybe photography, this is John Akomfra's Purple, which we co-commissioned. But at some point, as I said, we wanted to, or we understood that working with artists, we also need to let them create work. So again, coming from the practice of commissioning, we embarked on these long-term research projects, at least 3 years at the time, combined with fellowship programs, where we also looked at 3-year cycles, and where we kind of started to externalizing knowledge. No, we invited guest curators to lead 3-year cycles. They were asked to invite 5 people from different disciplines to come onto a journey, a 2-week journey every year with us over the course of 3 years. And instead of thinking immediately about production, we asked them not to produce and not to think about exhibitions, but to stage a 2 to 3 day performative conference, a happening of ideas, or a lab, kind of like the one that you're participating in now. So it was really multi-formatted. It could be anything of panel conversations, panel discussions, keynotes, performances, workshops, kids workshops, lectures, screening programs, and so on. And this really then again created this incredibly dynamic engine of new connections, of inspiration, of deep insights into different ways of working. And after these moments of togetherness, of deep immersion in the ocean, on the ocean, and in the processes around the ocean, we would then embark on these 3-year commissions. We, beyond that, then facilitated, and this is Susanne Winterling's work, we facilitated residency programs at the Alligator Head Foundation so that artists could actually work alongside the conservationists with the community and get involved in restorative practices. Susanne Winterling was the first resident at the Alligator Head Foundation and has since then developed a work that is actually an act of solidarity with dinoflagellates, which is a glowing algae, which will hopefully result in a biosphere declaration of one of the last 5 bays in the Caribbean that have these glowing algae. So we've always reserved the right, when we embarked on these long-term research commissions, that it doesn't necessarily need to become art. It could also become a joint PhD program with the Max Planck Institute. It could have become a policy intervention at the International Seabed Authority. It could become an educational program or an artwork, like here Ingo Niermann, Sea Lovers, a film that he shot when he was with Chus Martinez in the Solomon Islands. So at some point, all of this working, and you can see, as we were discussing sound early on, this is Jana Winderin. Jana Winderin was on the first journey that we ever took, circumnavigating Iceland, and sound has always been, or from the beginning, played an immense role. Jana was a fellow with the Academy for 4 years, the first 4 years of its existence, and has later, I think only in 2017 actually, done first work for us when she provided a work for Tidalectics, our first ever exhibition, which was based on a term coined by Cameo Brathwaite, a Barbadian poet, that kind of set Tidalectics versus the dialectics, where he's kind of emphasizing the rhythmic sounds of the waves, the creolization of voices, the creolization of peoples, especially in the Caribbean. So it's something of a cyclical philosophy and a rhythmical philosophy over the dialectics that were used in the West. Anyway, so at some point, this network, the approach, the practices grew and grew and grew, and we needed to find a home for it. And the home then became Venice. So since 2019, we operate a space in Venice called Ocean Space, which is the image behind me, if you can see it, still see it. It is a former church, the Church of San Lorenzo. Supposedly, the Venetians were hoping that Marco Polo's remains were buried there. They aren't. And if you read on TripAdvisor, it says Marco Polo's remains are buried there. They're not. We can assure you the floors of the church have been open for 25 years because one of the superintendenzas was a keen archaeologist, and she was digging and digging and digging. She found the remains of 2 Byzantine churches, but no Marco Polo, to her great despair. nevertheless. So we found this church in a time in Venice when the mayor had just gone to prison for embezzlement, all connected to the Moses. So again, the sea, and Venice was governed by an interim government, the technocratic government that was just interested in making deals. And the deals that we made was we closed the floors, we closed the ceilings, we make the Chiesa accessible to the public again, and in return, we could operate it for 9 years. And so since 3 years, we're operating it as Ocean Space. As you can imagine, the past 2 years were rather difficult, but nevertheless, Ocean Space has a very engaged program, 2 exhibitions a year, always new commissions, not coming from the collection, not being connected to the collection. So we commission artists, we produce their work, we show the work, and then the works go back to the artist, and the collection may have the first conversation with them, but the artists remain ownership of their work. Over the years, we've commissioned quite a few artists now. We started with Armin Linke many years ago, who was looking at the image-making processes around deep-sea mining and the connection between academia, science, policy around these processes. After that, we went on to work with Joan Jonas, who also came through the current fellowship program. She was part of a convening in Kochi, India, and then later participated in the residency in Jamaica. And starting from the myths and legends around mermaids, she then created a work called Moving Off the Land. What you see here, we were very fortunate that at some point we also stumbled across, and I consciously say stumble because meandering and serendipity became also modes under which we operated. And so one night, David Gruber, which is a fantastic marine biologist who's keenly interested in the perception of marine animals, and I went night diving. And he's built this contraption that kind of teases the biofluorescent properties of corals and other marine species to glow in the dark. So he goes diving with these tremendously blue lights and yellow filters over the masks and in the camera. And what it does is that a protein transforms this light and throws it back in these incredible colors. We knew that corals had these properties. We knew that some fish had these properties. We knew that some rays and sharks had these properties. But what we didn't know was that hawksbill turtles also have these properties. After this discovery, Yale went on to use these proteins in neuroscience, and it had been voted one of the 20 most important discoveries of the first 20 years of this decade. So, but I guess similarly to what you're doing, and I think Drew was alluding to earlier, bringing the necessity of bringing people together, all of our work has always been to kind of break down the barriers between disciplines, to bring people together. This is a convening that we held in Singapore at the Center for Contemporary Art, led by Ute Meter-Bauer, and bringing really everyone together that was part of her 3-year journey with us. And here we come to the inhabitants. Margarita showed some images of this work before. But back to Ocean Space, the attempt here in Venice is really to leave kind of the logic of an exhibition space behind. And besides showing fantastic works, obviously, and activating them through programming, public programming and educational programming, the aim is really to become an active agent of transformation within the city, within the neighborhood, the city, and its relationship to the lagoon. So restorative practices are key here. Community building is key. Like let's say salt marsh restoration is part of the public program. Beach cleanups, plastic cleanups are part of the program, as much so as discursive processes and programs as we are holding them tonight whilst I'm talking to you. The last resident in Jamaica was this young Swiss artist, Claudia Comte, who works a lot with chainsaws. She worked with a number of members of the local community to create this entire new body of work, which is based obviously on corals, sponges, and so on. What she also did was that she then went back to a prior work that she had done, or body of work, which was cacti. And she brought these cacti, or the shape of these cacti, to Jamaica. We 3D printed in reused plastic molds for these cacti, poured them in concrete. Concrete, obviously, being a very carbon-hungry material, but it has this rough and porous surface. So what these corals are meant to be is two things. A, they're monuments to the efforts of the fishermen to actually work together with the Alligator Head Foundation and are not fishing anymore in their traditional fishing grounds. But on the other hand, they're also they're attracting coral to regrow. So besides obviously being some kind of ecotourism attraction for snorkeling and diving, they're also becoming coral reefs. And then the works have been brought back to Madrid, where they've been shown earlier this year, activated again by a performance by Cecilia Bangolea, another artist, fantastic artist from Argentina. Here we are. This is Ocean Space. This is our neighborhood, and it's quite an interesting neighborhood because the Campo San Lorenzo is quite a diverse and intergenerational community in the heart of the Castello, which is one of the last neighborhoods in Venice that have not been quite as affected by Airbnb and over tourism, but is still a real neighborhood. And the reason why we're calling it Ocean Space and not kind of a gallery or an exhibition space or a museum for the ocean or an ocean pavilion, even in the logic of Venice, was really to lower the threshold for the neighborhood to enter into this space and to participate in the program, the discursive and public program that we're holding. What we wanted to do and why Venice obviously made sense, and especially in this ambition to become more than an exhibition space, but an active agent of transformation, is that Venice, at least at the time, was the iconic frontline of sea level rise in Europe. But Venice also has this very peculiar, and this is Joan Jonas and Sylvia Earle, which was a fantastic moment of bringing these two 84 and 85 at the time year-old legends in their fields, Sylvia Earle being an iconic oceanographer and Joan Jonas clearly media artist and performance artist. And now I got sidetracked. Oops. Where was I? Venice, exactly. So Venice has this peculiar tradition of questioning itself and the world through the lens of art, no? And then it has been on this intersection of exchange of ideas, exchange of goods, and quite open in that sense for anybody who has anything to offer, right? Venice has been giving space and opening it up. And all of these different components and qualities that Venice had and has made it an ideal home for Ocean Space to make it its home. And so since then, we've been operating here and operating here happily. Now the question really becomes how to build community, how to activate community, because obviously also when you come with such a name that has all kinds of implicit histories, it's not necessarily always that easy to build community and build alliances with activists or with members of disenfranchised and marginalized communities. And that has, for the last couple of years, really been a focus for us, especially in Oceania. We're currently reimagining the current fellowship program. We've abandoned the boat for a number of reasons. One of them being the sound pollution, the other one obviously also the carbon footprint, and then that it's a very, very exclusive moment. As I said, sound has been an important part of our work. This is Karl Michael von Hausdorff and Jonsi. They had been part of one of the journeys to the Lao group in Fiji. I did a whole bunch of recordings there, which they turned into an album under the name of Dark Morph. This is Francesca Thyssen-Bonamistza herself. She did a work on sound pollution in the ocean called Sounds Too Many, and anybody who's interested in this is cordially invited to visit the digital platform, the Ocean Archive, and find Sounds Too Many there. The Ocean Archive was really born out of the understanding that it is incredibly hard to have these multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary encounters in many spaces. And so the Ocean Archive is a user-based platform that is organized in a non-hierarchical manner, so it doesn't discriminate between an artwork or a scientific paper or the documentation of an artwork or an article written on the scientific paper or a fisherman's testimony or a navigational chat. The Ocean Archive organizes itself around 42 concept tags, and underneath that, in a more granular level, keywords. And so it is built on relations rather than fixed hierarchies and structures. And underneath that is a community platform called Ocean Community, where we host the Ocean Uni, which is a digital higher learning module, right? It's organized in 7 bi-weekly sessions, 2-hour sessions, always around artworks. To that, we host a fellowship program, the Ocean Fellowship Program. As you can see, we're not really creative with the names. This is a program for young career professionals from all disciplines to come together in Venice in residency over the course of 3 to 4 months to work on individual research projects that they apply with, but then also work collaboratively across and use ocean space as a stage for their public programming. You might have seen this over the last couple of weeks, coinciding with the United Nations General Assembly. I think 2 weeks ago, we were able to project a work by Superflex called Vertical Migration onto the facade of the United Nations General Assembly, whilst they were making a point about the importance of biodiversity. We thought it is absolutely necessary that some ambassadors of the ocean make it there as well. And so this is the projection of the siphonophore, which is a collaborative animal made up from many individuals working together without a centralized brain. But it's a fantastic analogy for collaboration and interspecies communication. And that's the end of my slides.